For my Hackers Week project, I decided to go ahead and do a Google certification. I did level one, which I wasn't sure if it was going to be worthwhile because I figured I would know a lot of it, and it turns out I did. But it was also very useful in some ways. So basically, there were basically three levels of information in this project. The first one was stuff I already knew, like how to assign something to a Google Classroom, something like that. So a lot of it I just ended up skipping over and taking the test. The second level was stuff that sounded very interesting, such as setting up students into Google Groups and then using that so that they can communicate by instant message over Hangouts with you or each other, so that sometimes they could seek assistance from each other rather than asking the teacher, which I thought was awesome. But unfortunately, Fairfax County, who I work for, has a walled garden version of the Google Apps for Education, so that happens to be one of the features that's turned off. And there were several examples of that where I thought, oh, that's interesting, and then I contacted my tech person, and no, Fairfax County does not allow that feature. And then finally, there were several things as well that I had never thought of or were aha moments for me, and so that ended up making it worthwhile. So the way it works is you go to Google Teacher Center, as you can see on the screen here, and you choose training, and then I chose fundamentals training, and then level one, and then it basically just takes you through modules. And as you can see here, I already have them checked off. So I did all 13 of them in the 6 hours because, again, most of it I actually already knew. But if you click a particular level, it gives you what you need, and then as you go through, I'll just click that there. It gives you the expected time, and then it gives you a little introduction like so, and some activities. There are some videos you can watch. There are some goals, and then there's little tests here that you can take to check whether or not you learned the material. And then if you keep going, there are other things like this. So they can just kind of talk you through it or show you examples or videos or whatever. So it was an interesting way of doing it. I think the best example of why this was useful for me is the actual spreadsheet. So it turns out I don't usually use Google Sheets in my classroom because I teach physics and geosystems. So the most I ever do with it is I will have the students make a graph. So I know how to do that, but I don't really know how to format it. And so I ended up getting frustrated while I was making it, as you can see, because as I went down the left side, it worked fine until I got here. I tried to create more rows and they didn't work. It ended up with these little three boxes here that nothing would fill into. So I actually had to go back and enter my last couple entries over here on the right. And I think this is basically a summary of how my life works when it comes to Google Classroom. I only learn what I need to know, and I don't necessarily have any idea how to do it other than that. So I don't know how to format sheets. Some of the things I did learn, though, in this particular unit, the first one, which I think blew my mind, and I had no idea that you could do this, was when you create an assignment, you can actually assign it to more than one class at once, which you just check whichever classes you wanted to go to. I had no idea that was possible. And the teacher I talked to didn't know it was possible either. I don't know if that's a new feature or whatever, but that alone probably was worth doing the entire 6 hours. I was also inspired with the idea of using Hangouts to have parents join IEP meetings. Sometimes we have parents participate by phone, and we usually do that by telephone. And I had an epiphany while I was working through this. It wasn't necessarily part of the thing, but they were talking about Google Hangouts, and I thought, oh, well, why don't we have parents communicate, do that, and we can set up a webcam or something so we can see them as well as hear them, and it might make it easier for the parents as well. So that's something I'm going to talk to my IEP department about. One of the other things I discovered is that you can actually search by color, which I didn't realize was possible. So if you go to Google and you search for an object, like let's say a football player, and then you go to Google Images, one of the videos pointed out that if you want action shots, you can filter your search by color. I said, you can filter searches by color? Well, you can. So if I search that by color to green, as you can see, now we have action shots because the field is green, which makes it much more likely to get something like that. I don't know how useful that is on my day-to-day life, but that is something interesting which I discovered. Also, I discovered that Google Earth has a feature, which they added in 2017 apparently, called Voyager, which are a bunch of curated lessons that walk you through Google Earth and take you into places on Earth. So we may actually use that for the Ring of Fire when we are doing when we're doing plate tectonics. But in this case, like for example, this takes you down to Paris, Gare du Nord, and then as you switch, you can go to different places on the map, and they have all kinds of things. They have one on the effects of climate change, and it shows like flooding in various areas and tree deforestation and so forth. So that is really interesting. And the last one that I really found helpful was that idea of putting a YouTube video into Google Form, because a lot of times I'll teach through videos and then make what I call instructional worksheets on a Google Doc where they have to answer questions having watched the video. And I think that might even be easier to grade though, because the Google Forms are much easier to look at. So again, I think that a lot of it was stuff that I already knew, but there was enough of it that was useful that I think this was worth my time. And that is what I did for my project.